Friends, welcome to Perfect Picture channel. If you are a photographer, have set out with the camera, then you should also know that you can capture a lot and inform people through your photograph, but there are some points which need to be understood. Learn through this video and avoid getting into trouble. This is the third video on this topic. You are requested to subscribe this channel. Thank you.
Said using it say in an ad film or using it something the purpose of which is purely commercial versus editorial usage, the purpose of which is newsworthiness.
No, ma'am.
News public.
I would just supplement to Madam Majumdar. In one particular case, your intention is to inform people and commerce may be incidental to it. In another case, commerce is a main purpose.
Yes.
No, but recently there's the same picture. It's okay for the news it was taken, but now it is on the display for an exhibition. Is
No,
it
but
a commercial use?
an exhibition is also not commercial use.
Yeah. So very clearly we have
Exhibition
to
is
be very
not
clear about it.
exhibition is not commercial use.
Exhibition
When
is
I'm
not-
saying commercial use, like Sir said very eloquently, the purpose is commerce. The purpose is only commerce.
Okay.
Madam, how do you justify a sting operation?
I won't justify it, sir.
Still will never be justified. You can do it. It's a newsworthy.
But it is from you.
So if you think about it, think back to, sorry, just one last, I'll just answer that before, sir. No, it's nothing to do with national good. Think in your head, think about footage of sting operations. What do you see? They never show you the face of the person.
That's right. Try to.
They will tell you the boy, they often,
Plenty of time they show.
but when they do, then they can run into trouble. But that's why a careful broadcaster will ensure that they, like they do with minors, for example. We were just talking about how with minors it's an inalienable right, even if they are a criminal. The point is then the solution, the answer. How do you make sure you stay within the contours of the law and still, air a sting operation? Don't show the person's face.
Yeah,
Black.
Already, in US or West, you can't show any blood or health, death or something like that because this is a mental trauma for the people. And what happened in Mumbai case, whole story was shown on the TV.
Now, sir, now we are entering into ethics of journalism and not into law of journalism. All these things are basically unethical. They are covered under the ethics, not under the law.
But I tell you, it's not that in US they don't show it.
No, they are actually.
They
It's called
also
trigger
show.
warning.
In
You add
number
a
of
trigger
pictures
warning.
They can show also, but it depends what you have seen.
So in visuals now, what is happening, and lots of people are doing that, even news portals are doing that on social media, sir, is that you begin with a trigger warning. And you say trigger warning,
Yeah.
scenes that may be, disturbing to person of, certain
Some visuals may be
disturbing, etc. So they'll give you a little bit of a disclaimer before they show it.
Yeah.
When I'm clicking on the screen, so the people who are in my frame, so any of them in that frame can file a case against me?
It's
Is it
not,
like that?
it's no, not at all, sir.
Right, is it not at all, means you are saying personally not at all, but is it technically
Legally,
that
can he?
legally he
Can
can
he?
do
Question
it or
is.
not?
No, sir. Like I said, if you're shooting general scenes in a public place, at that moment no one's objected, they're seeing, they're part of the frame, they're aware, you're not doing it behind their back, you're shooting in broad daylight in their presence, in a public place, you're shooting them going about their business, doing a public act, then in scenarios like that, those are your defenses.
No, again, there will be one thing which a court will certainly take notice of. Court will certainly ask, okay, you were photographed, you were shown in the media. Tell me what kind of injury you have suffered.
Yes.
But like in a gay parade, it's a public parade. You
Just explain the LGBTQ issue to you, sir. That is not, I'm sorry, it's not a public event. I have the right not to disclose my identity.
There are injuries being caused.
but can they say it on a road?
That may be.
To perform a public function, which is a protest.
And is it allowed?
No,
No,
sir.
roll back and say we need our privacy.
No, sir, they can. And I like I said at the beginning,
That is something we have to be sensitive about. That is our sensitivity at play. But by law, they are on the
I answered you on the law. I am not addressing your sensibilities or ethics of it. And LGBTQ parade has to be treated differently from all of this. That
Where does it say? And what does
it's not about where does it say. That's exactly what I was telling you. The question is what Sir talked about earlier as well. It's no different from, say, identifying a minor. It's about identifiability. If I choose to wear a mask, if someone is there and with their face exposed, it's a different thing. I choose to wear a mask, I am wearing a mask and I'm participating in an event. What does a mask do? The purpose of a mask is to conceal. If you take such a close-up shot of my face that despite that mask I become identifiable, then you are violating my right to privacy because you are making sure that I get identified despite my use of a mask. So I am not performing.
What about the group picture of LGBT?
No, but like I said, sir, it's the identifiability. The question is, someone has the right to say, I wear a mask so that I won't be recognized. I'm participating in a parade. I'm walking past on a parade, So that's why take long shots. Don't take close-ups of individual faces without their consent. Don't take individual pictures without their consent. If you're taking individual pictures, just take their consent. Make sure, and okay, also just wanted to clarify here. We keep saying take their consent. What does that mean? Are you going to walk around with sheets of paper and get people to sign?
Right?
Certainly not. All you have to do is carry a mobile phone with you or even your camera. Hold the mobile phone up and say, sir, I'm going to take a picture of yours. Do you consent to that picture being taken? Right. Just record them saying yes in that phone. That's good enough.
That's a good idea.
Ultimately, think about a practical way of how you can do it without paperwork. So you're taking a picture at that moment. How do you ensure that that person doesn't come back later on and give you trouble for taking that picture? Shoot a little video of them saying, yes, I don't have a problem with you taking my picture. And trust me, in a pride parade, there will be innumerable people who will be perfectly happy for you to take that picture. Go ahead and take pictures of those who are okay with it. Don't take pictures of those that are not okay with it. Ask that question and then take your picture.
Ma'am, another question comes in that. Number of times when we cover demonstrations and police ask us to give them our pictures to identify people. So, and they file a case. It happens number of times nowadays. Can the person tomorrow sue me for that?
No,
Certainly not.
they can't.
Because he may say how you have taken my
they
picture
can't.
because your picture become evidence against me.
By being at a public place, he chose to be photographed.
Not only that.
Again, that
also,
question
you have
comes.
no. There is another very important exception. That is the law and order exception. So when a law enforcement authority asks you to produce something as evidence, you don't unfortunately have the right to hold that back. If you were there and they identify you as a photographer, irrespective of what you may feel mentally about the ethics of it, you have no option but to hand it over to law enforcement because you don't want to get into trouble.
No, are you giving it as a favor to the police guy or are they?
No, it is not a favor. अगर आपके पास किसी तरह का evidence है किसी crime से related, वो आपसे बिल्कुल मांग सकते हैं.
बिल्कुल मांग
एक चाहिए मैडम.
And you're forced to give it.
You are forced to give it.
Somebody is being killed or dying, and photographer will try to protect that person or take picture only.
Ethics again.
ये तो ethics है.
Really depends on the.
And I tell you two things, because a lot of people ask this type of questions. What is ethics here?
Remember
First,
that
our job
child
is
and the
what?
vulture picture.
Yes,
To
yes.
take photograph also,
Famous
it's very
picture.
Famous
important.
picture.
That became such a big flash.
What happens when what we consider to be a public space is actually a private space? Like for example, the streets of Gurugram. आप कोई भी बिल्डिंग के बाहर आप कुछ खींच रहे हो, 4 गार्ड्स आ जाते हैं.
Oh, that's.
No, they harass the hell out of us.
But what I'm saying is that just because 4 guards are, it doesn't become a private space. That's just general. That's just.
They say the streets are DLF's public.
No, certainly not. They're not DLF's private property.
देखिए वो प्राइवेट गार्ड का तो ये है कि अगर ये सरकार की भी सड़क है और उनके घर के सामने अगर आपने गाड़ी पार्क कर दी, साइड में भी गाड़ी पार्क कर दी, तो गार्ड निकल के आ जाएंगे. तो आप वहां पर मुकदमा लड़ने जाएंगे या फिर गाड़ी सीधे सीधे हटा के कहीं और लगा लेंगे.
The question is obviously someone asserting it. For all the people who have encroached, I mean, I was just commenting on this to somebody today while driving down from Noida. that हमारे पास तो कोई pavements रहे नहीं, because all the pavements of Noida,
Yeah.
especially in some of the the more posh localities, are completely covered by personal gardens. But that doesn't mean that those pavements have become private spaces. So someone asserting doesn't make a public space a private space.
What happens when cross-border and different nationalities, I take a picture here, I try use the metrics of India or the metrics of US, but it's used in Japan, which has a completely different metrics of understanding of whatever you're saying.
That's a problem.
What happens then?
That's a problem because ultimately wherever a legal issue arises, where that legal issue is filed or wherever the claim is made, it will be decided on the basis of the law of that country.
Jurisdiction
So far as that picture is actually viewable or accessible in that country. So for example, you publish a picture in say Hindustan Times, right? You publish a picture in Hindustan Times, that Hindustan Times is given as a free copy on a flight that is going from Delhi to Tokyo. A Japanese national who's on that flight picks up that newspaper, lands in Tokyo, and there is something in that picture which goes against Japanese laws. Can someone sue you in Japan? The answer is no, because the origin of that photograph is an Indian publication. So an Indian publication by its very nature is meant to be circulated within the territory of India. Just because it incidentally got onto an aircraft and landed in Tokyo doesn't mean that that Indian publication is actually being distributed in Tokyo. So it is not violating the laws of Tokyo. So the test really is, and that becomes problematic on the internet, especially when you have news portals that are accessible in different countries of the world. So the test most countries follow today is a test of what is called targeting consumers. So targeting consumers means, and again for news there is no consumer as such, everyone is a consumer of news. But when it comes to commercial content, the question is, was that content targeting the citizens of say Brazil? Or was that content targeting the citizens of India, but incidentally people in Brazil happen to see it because it's on the internet? So if it wasn't targeting the citizens of that particular place, then then an offense may not be made out in that particular place. So these are slightly more complex questions.
Here I would like to add something very interesting. It reminds me of law of defamation. If you murder a person, then naturally place where that person is murdered, and that place whatever police station is having jurisdiction, case will be filed in that police station. But suppose I have been defamed, then that particular, and I have been defamed on television or a newspaper which is having all India circulation, then I have right to choose any court in India. I can say that whether even if that newspaper has been published in Delhi, if it is being circulated in Trivandrum, and if I want to harass that person, I will file a case in Trivandrum, or maybe I will file a case in Manipur. So these jurisdictional issues, particularly in defamation cases, they are very interesting.
Good, but one more thing, ma'am, I want to clarify on your copyright issues, particularly. You said when some institutions hire us, media organization, for taking photographs, it's okay, they have the first right because they have paid a salary. But first right means what? Can they sell my pictures afterwards?
Yes.
Can they, or no, you right to use in the paper, like if I am working for Hindustan Times, they can use my picture because I have taken for them.
If you're an
They have
employee of
not taken
Hindustan,
up my rights to sell my pictures for other commercial users.
so
Can
it
they?
depends. If you are an employee,
Yeah.
No,
And-
if I'm not an
no,
employee.
his
No, if
question
I'm
was
employed.
as an employee. No, 1 second. His question was as an employee.
I
Then
said
yes,
for
they can
employee.
sell the
It's
picture.
called work for hire. You are working and you are hired. You have relinquished your rights to the institution.
No, but in my letter of appointment, we never relinquish my
That doesn't
rights.
matter. You don't have to. It's
That's right.
inherent in your employment that the pictures that you take while in the employ of the newspaper belong to that. So like I said, they are the first owner of copyright. First owner of copyright means what? What is being the owner of copyright mean? Being the owner of copyright means having the right to decide what is to be done with that picture later on in terms of its distribution, sale, etc. If you are not an employee, then only they get use rights. So you've given them the picture for publication against an article.
For one time or multiple?
It is a one-time use. So it is up to you. You will decide based on whatever terms.
And do they have the right to sell that picture?
No, so it all depends. So if you are not an employee, it all depends on what terms you have with them.
Terms what you have
So
given.
there is no term, say on verbal.
If there are no terms, then that is exactly, sorry, as far as a situation where you are a freelancer is concerned, now and that's exactly what we're doing with Mr. Shankar's case, is we're looking at what the common industry practices were, because there was no written contract. So what are the common industry practices at that time? Common industry practices being one-time use. If you've been paid on the basis, so the test that someone will apply is how much were you paid? Were you paid the value of the photograph as if it were a work of art? It's like saying, like an M.F. Hussain painting or something like that. Someone is buying the painting. You're buying that painting in perpetuity, right? Is that the kind of value you were paid? Or were you paid the value of a one-time use, one-time publication in the newspaper? If you were paid the value of a one-time use, then certainly they can't sell or commercialize that picture in any other form. And that's the problem with the digital world, because the moment they have access to the digital image, they can misuse it in future as well.
They are doing it.
Absolutely. And that's a basic problem that you have to push back on it and say, I gave it to you for one-time use. You have no right to commercialize it. So for example, absolutely. So for example, if you gave it for the purpose of news reporting, and they are taking it and selling it as part of, say, a repository of images like Getty Images or something like that.
Yes.
They can't do that. They can't do that. So that is exactly where.
I would supplement it a little. Suppose you are having complete rights over a particular picture, then you can assign your right, you can license your right. So if you are licensing somebody, then it will be for the particular use for which you are licensing.
No, see, being a professional photographer, this is simply impossible to get
Absolutely.
all the pictures copyrighted, unwritten.
No, you don't have to.
No, you don't have to get it copyrighted. The question is,
Selling or licensing your image to a publication, you have to negotiate and have something in writing as to what you're giving them,
Pablo,
for how long
1
you're
minute.
giving
Shipra
them.
wants.
Madam, I work for India Today 24 years. Whatever work, from morning to night, all the pictures put and given to them. I work for the India Today, not for the sale for the other market. By all pictures, they use India Today every time. I don't bother for that. I don't mind for that. But they're using my picture, selling my picture other place. In this case, what I can do?
you can't do anything, ma'am, because unless you have
Then we can exploit it.
no, so that's the difficulty if you're an employee, because as an employee you are paid a salary.
But my everything you cannot.
You can, unfortunately you can, because if someone, see, ultimately the parallel works in every field. The reason why people employ, say, scientists who work in a lab. Now scientists may say, no, but I invented this thing, I didn't want you to commercialize this invention or to make a product out of it and put it in the market, I want a royalty. The problem is, if you're an employee, the understanding is they are the owners, and if someone is the owner of copyright, they have the right to do what they want with that picture. You are entering into your employment. The default is your employer owns it. They can. Madam, they can. The answer is they can. But what Mr. Pablo said, I wanted to point out to that for a minute and hold that thought, because that's a very important thought for all of you to consider. Practically speaking, are you going to be able to walk around with contracts and ask people to sign contracts? The answer is no. So let me give you a solution to that. I'm also looking at it from the point of view of solutions, right? So what is your solution? Your solution is, someone says to you that, look, Ajkal, everyone uses emails, right? Your solution is, someone says, okay, can you give me these pictures? Now, how are you giving the pictures? You're not giving a physical, you're probably sending a Google Drive link or something like that to them. When you're sending them the Google Drive link, in that email, you should write, I'm sending you this picture, please note that I am giving it to you for one-time use for your publication. That's all. Finished.
Good.
You don't need anyone to sign it off. Your intent is clear. Your intent is clear from that email. Now if someone wants to use it a second time round, they have to come back and negotiate with you. You've done it.
But it must be written.
So you put it in writing unilaterally, that's good enough. Yes, sir, they will be used. So unless you are aware of your right and do something actively about it, you can't blame someone for using it.
Definitely.
So you have to ensure that you're doing this. Example is a company or say a production house or something like that. It's in those instances when the first owner of copyright is not a human being, not an individual. Those are the kind of instances, or there are multiple owners of copyright, those are the instances where date of publication becomes relevant. If you're an individual photographer who owns a particular photograph, it's 60 years after the lifetime of the
and the counting of 60 years will start from the next year, 1st January of next year.
Living individual.
Yes.
Once you die, moral rights cease.
Finished.
It cannot.
Moral rights can't be transferred to your heirs or anyone who owns your estate or
What
whatever.
if I become deathless by removing my soul and putting it into an AI being? And then
Cryo tank. Cryo tank, right? Cryo tank is what I'm aiming for.
Sir, I will reply to your question. There is always a race between law and technology. Technology will run faster, law will try to catch it.
So,
as soon as the law tries to catch it, technology has gone even faster. So this is a perpetual race.
So in a lighter vein, you do know that instance, or the famous instance of the monkey that took its own picture, right?
That is the best.
Right? So that's
Who has the copyright?
from the monkey up until AI. So far, our laws and courts have continued to take the position that unless there's a human creator of a piece, there is no copyright. So copyright is necessarily something that flows to human beings, not to AI, not to monkeys. Thankfully, so far. So, Shipra ma'am, so far you're only dealing with conglomerates. Next, you'll be dealing with monkeys and AI.
What happens if a picture is then used by AI and converted to something, who owns the copyright? Because I am dealing with this on a daily basis now.
So when it comes to something called a derivative work,
Yes.
then the question is that for a derivative work to result, the test is really whether the access to the copyrighted work was authorized or not in the first place. So if the access to the copyrighted work was an authorized access, then there can be fresh ownership over the derivative work by the creator of the derivative work. But if the access was unauthorized in the first place, then the derivative work has no legitimacy.
But what happens if it exists on the internet?
You know, I have to say this, there is a general belief that everything that is on the internet is free and legitimate. That's not true.
No, it's not.
So,
but
it's
that's
not.
a belief.
No, that's why I said there is a
Even
belief.
Google says that this image may be subject to
Copyright.
licensing or copyright.
Actually, Google doesn't say anything. Google is only an index.
They say now.
All I'm saying is that Google is only indexing pages. Google is not, so a lot of people say I found it on Google. No, actually you didn't find anything on Google. Google just led you to where that image is. So it's almost like your navigator, right? Google is not a repository of those images.